this Eurasian landmass, how to control it. How central it's been in the strategic documents and the strategic thinking of Britain, and thereafter the United States. The point where it comes up in the key strategic documents, that is, prevent Eurasian powers from coming together. So, but as you said, it means if you're gonna rule the Eurasian continent from the rimland, as the Americans say, or the maritime periphery, you do have to make sure that the Eurasian land powers are divided, which is a consistent theme, as you say. You have to keep the Germans split from the Russians, which was always the key British policy in Europe. But also you keep the Chinese from the Russians, the Iranians from the Chinese. They're essentially all split. But towards this end, I guess the weakness of the ability to split the Russians from the Germans or from Europe overall has always been Ukraine, as this was again the main bridge. You don't have this between the Russians and the Chinese, by the way. I think this is a key problem for American strategies. They have a vast border, and there's no disruptive middle state you can use. Mongolia wouldn't work. But anyways, my question was, how do you see this working out now? Because the project Ukraine, the efforts of yes, so using the Ukrainians to, as the Americans often say, knock out the Russians from the ranks of great powers and permanently decouple it from Europe. This is not going as planned. This is indeed, I think, it's the cascading effect. So the collapse appears to be intensifying. If we look over the past only few days, of course, the American attempt or suspending the arms delivery, this can be reversed, tomorrow or later today. So this is, this can shift. But the Russian intensity becoming more aggressive in the bombing, the front line weakening. How do you see this? Let's say Project Ukraine going forward from here, because there has to be a plan B for the United States.
Well, okay. So my reading of the United States, and if we talk about the United States, of course we have to accept the premise that the United States is not a monolith. The United States came into being as a rejection of Western colonialism, as a reaction to it, and an attempt to establish a new free country. And so this is what the American Independence Day is celebrating. In fact, we just had the Independence Day yesterday. And in that sense, the United States, if it goes back to its Republican roots, their natural ally and friend in the world is exactly Russia. And during the whole of the 19th century and even in the 17th century, 18th century, Russia and the United States have been very, very close friends and allies. So the reasons for this are still valid and actual, and there are historical tradition which do bring these two countries together. So now the question is, does Trump administration want to continue being the military enforcement arm of the Western empire, or do they want to return to their Republican roots and just become a major power in their own hemisphere, while at the same time having friendly and constructive, mutually beneficial relationships with other powers like Russia, China, India, and so forth? And first of all, Donald Trump's statements on this subject have been very consistent, that he wants to extricate the United States from all these imperialist projects around the world. And then over the last 180 days or so that he's been president of the United States, his action has also been consistent in this respect. So, not the rhetoric. The rhetoric will cause you brain injuries if you focus on that, but the actual effects of his policies. So, already in January, Marco Rubio, his foreign secretary, his Secretary of State, said that the United States actually regards the post-World War II order to be more than obsolete, that it has been weaponized against the United States, that it does not suit American interest, that the new reality is multipolar integrations, and that the United States intends to embrace those multipolar integrations. So the fact that we can see today the United States extricating itself from Project Ukraine, because the big lobbying push in March and April this year has been to maneuver the United States into providing security guarantees to Ukraine, and Trump has declined to do so. And now we see the United States seizing weapons deliveries to Ukraine. I say it's a pause, and they will continue. Well, maybe, but the information from the ground in Ukraine. I have a friend in Kiev who I speak to periodically. He told me there's no question about it. The Americans are walking. Everybody, everybody can tell. The most important weapon systems that the Ukrainians need today, they're no longer receiving them. The justification is we're running out, we don't have enough for ourselves, we have to do this. But the effect is that, in fact, Trump is letting the Russians take Ukraine, and Project Ukraine is finished now. They will, there's no question that Ukraine will be defeated. And the powers that are most anxious to preserve their foothold, the beachhead, as Mackinder would say, in Ukraine are France and Britain. And the relationships between France and Britain on the one hand and the Trump administration on the other have not been so friendly. Then there was a group, I forget if they had a name actually, under National Security Agency in the United States, and the group was brought together for the purpose of coming up with strategies how to continue to antagonize and destabilize Russia, how to coerce them into some kind of a peace that would be beneficial to Ukraine, even all the way up to staging terror attacks in Russia. Donald Trump, how do you call it? He dismissed the people on this group, and he discontinued their role in the United States. If we shift our attention to Iran, there was huge pressure on Trump to go to war against Iran. And that's a subject about that there's a deep rabbit hole about Iran there. Trump has, in his own way that seems very incoherent and chaotic, but in effect, he has avoided going to war against Iran. He launched a bombing attack, which didn't seem to achieve very much, which the Iranians were apparently aware of and warned about in advance, and which after which he said, okay, we've done it. It's no need to continue with vaporized Iranian nuclear program. So we won, and then that's the end of that. When asked about the regime change, he said, no, I don't want a regime change. In fact, he wanted to lift sanctions from Iran. He wanted to ease some sanctions off of Iran. And Steve Witkoff even went as far in an interview with one of these U.S. networks, ABC or someone like that. He said that lifting the sanctions from Iran was a signal to China, in fact, that the U.S. administration is ready to deal. And then days later, they announced that they had struck new trade deals with China. So, if I look at all these changes that we've seen in the world since Trump took over, they are very much consistent with the idea of abandoning the post World War II global order, where the United States was basically the chief global cop, which was enforcing militarily the dominance, the hegemony of the Western Empire around the world, and extricating the United States from all those wars, and then striking deals with sovereign nations like Russia, like China, like Iran, also, and at the same time not pursuing a good path with the European powers, be it the EU, France, Britain, Canada, and in fact, if you read Western press, they absolutely hate Trump. There's not a day that goes by that they don't have an insulting article about Trump and his administration. I wanted to spend a minute more on Iran, because that's a very significant one, because the pressure on Trump to bomb Iran, we have just seen it. But there was a similar episode that played out in 2019. So in June of 2019, so practically 5 years ago, Iran shot down a U.S. Global Hawk drone over the Straits of Hormuz. And then there was a great campaign, a lobbying campaign aimed at Trump to launch a bombing campaign against Iran, which he declined. He said, "No, I will not do that." And then the side that reacted most hysterically to this was exactly the British embassy, and we got the Kim Derrick memo gate, because at the time the British ambassador to Washington was Sir Kim Derrick, who is now Lord Kim Derrick, and the organization called Anonymous leaked out these cables because he shot off a bunch of memos to the Foreign Office in London. And what we saw in that Foreign Office is that it was exactly the British embassy that was orchestrating this pressure campaign against Trump to kind of push the United States into war against Iran. And when Trump declined, Kim Derrick was very frustrated, very disappointed, and he issued some very undiplomatic criticism of Trump. And he said that, he was incompetent, chaotic, inept, and things like this. And he also said that, well, if we might still be able to maneuver Trump into attacking Iran, but we have to flood the zone around him. He used the word flood the zone. We have to flood the zone around him with more hawkish Trump whisperers that will persuade him to go to war.